In our last full day in Boston, we look into the life and work of perhaps one of the most important men of the entire 20th century, but a life that was also tragically cut far too short. So come with us as we investigate Boston's view of John F. Kennedy.
Well, we've made our way to the very quaint, old construction town of Brookline, Massachusetts. All the homes display their age here. This one here, though, is a childhood home of President John F. Kennedy, the birthplace of America's 35th president. So we're going to check out JFK's early years here today. The house turned into a memorial as well, but the visitor center is down in the basement, and you can very easily see this is a very real neighborhood with real yards, just as they were. So you can imagine the Kennedys enjoying this type of yard in those early years of John F. Kennedy's life.
One of the challenges of maintaining this home as a memorial is that the authenticity of the home and its environment limits the space for the visitor center to be in the converted basement of an old home. Yet there still is video introduction as well as timelines of both this Brookline home of JFK's birth as well as the life, childhood, and career of JFK the man. The house itself served as the birthplace home of John F. Kennedy, but remained a residential home through multiple owners over the years. Following the president's untimely death, his family reacquired the house and his mother Rose redecorated the interior to a look and feel similar to their time in the home. A tour of the house does not allow video, but there are audio recordings of Rose Kennedy sharing her memories of Jack and their family life in this house, helping to bring a real sense of humanity and relatability to one of the most important Americans of the 20th century.
Another reason why I love these National Park Service tours is they give you some information that you don't always know. So when you look at this very timely neighborhood with these backyards, some of these houses at the time were actually not here. There was a lot of open space down through here that the Kennedys really enjoyed their open air and their space after leaving some lives more in the more congested areas of Boston to come up here. And this was the home where John F. Kennedy, where Jack lived until he was about 3 or so. And then they moved on down to a larger place not too far from here. So I think we'll check that out. It's not open to the public, but I think we'll check that out later. After John F. Kennedy had become president, the new owner of the house was asked to give some tours from time to time, people coming on in to see the room that little Jack was born in. She obliged from time to time, but eventually turned the house on over to the National Park Service. But you'll notice here the day of mourning after his assassination and how many people just crowded the streets just to be a part of remembering. So John F. Kennedy's birthplace home that we were just visiting comprised his parents, John himself, his older brother Joe Jr., 2 younger sisters, a couple of house employees, starting to feel very, very cramped. Then they moved down here to this house, which was a little bit bigger. Here's where they had 3 more kids. And this is where Jack would have grown up the rest of his formative years after his family had earned some more funding through the stock market, through banking, and those types of endeavors as well. But this is a second home, not open to the public. It is a private residence, but it is just right down the street here in this Brookline community that Rose, Jack's mom, had always said was a fine place to raise a family.
After leaving the Kennedy birthplace in Brookline, a jaunt on the Green Line and the Red Line brought us to Harbor Point, where we enjoyed a pleasant walk along the Harbor Walk Trail to our second stop of the day.
Thompson Island, Boston Harbor, Boston skyline. Beautiful park here on the south side of Boston, Boston Harbor, the islands, and we have the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum. We'll go check that out. Presidential Library, the papers and museum. President John F. Kennedy, 35th President of the United States, tragically killed 2 years into his term in Dallas, 1963. One of the most influential and important presidents of the 20th century, despite his short tenure. So let's go check out his legacy, shall we? It is fascinating what presidential libraries and museums can give you. Even as a lover of history, you learn things that you don't even realize that you know. In this case, the fact that John F. Kennedy could have avoided military service because of his ailments and his injuries, but continued to fight on to make sure that he could get into combat duty. But then here on August 2nd, 1943, his boat being rammed by a Japanese destroyer, and the ordeal that followed to try to be rescued from swimming from island to island, subsisting only on coconuts. But then two native islanders teach him how to carve a message into a coconut, taking the inscribed coconut to an Australian coast watcher some 40 miles away. That helped rescue John F. Kennedy and his crew, eventually awarding him the Marine Corps Medal and the Purple Heart. And here, one of his cherished prized possessions is the actual coconut.
The Presidential Museum begins discussing his early adulthood, including his love of sailing, which Jack's brother Ted believes contributed mightily to his ability to survive his naval disaster during World War II. Visitors are then taken through a reliving of the campaign trail leading up to Kennedy's victory over then Vice President Richard Nixon in the election of 1960. With a rapidly changing society and a vastly increasing market for television media, the Kennedy-Nixon debates forever altered the relationship between presidential candidates and potential voters in their homes, with greater and easier access to visual, nonverbal communication skills and styles.
The candidates need no introduction. The Republican candidate, Vice President Richard M. Nixon, and the Democratic candidate, Senator John F. Kennedy. And now for the first opening statement by Senator John F. Kennedy. In the election of 1860, Abraham Lincoln said the question was whether this nation could exist, half slave or half free. In the election of 1960, and with the world around us, the question is whether the world will exist, half slave or half free. To all Americans, I say that the next 4 years are going to be difficult and challenging years for us all. The election may have been a close one, but I think that there is general agreement by all of our citizens that a supreme national effort will be needed in the years ahead move this country safely through the 1960s.
More than mine will rest the final judgment area of our court. Since this country was founded, each generation of Americans has been summoned to give testimony to its national loyalty. That's not what America will do for you, but what together we do for a Christian man.
For like a year. Before the event. Now you've had a chance to praise your job. Why do you like it, and why do you want to stay in office for more years?
Well, I find the work rewarding. Whether I'm going to stay and what my intentions are, all the rest seems to me still be many months away.
During Kennedy's short time in office, it was definitely a very complex time with the world changing rapidly. During the Cold War, after World War II, change of generation, and world political affairs. And they have multiple rooms with primary sources, debates, Kennedy meeting the press, his speeches, discussing the world affairs, the struggle between freedom and democracy versus communism and poverty, linking those two events together. But then also the space race and the need for Americans to enter and dominate the space race, particularly because, as Kennedy himself said, dominance in space will exist, a space race will exist, and the question is whether the Americans will be a part of it or not. And then again, the development of the Peace Corps and introducing volunteerism to the spread of freedom and the deliverance from poverty at home and at abroad. So the JFK Library Museum provides many exhibits that have first-hand accounts from the president's own words, especially in the new televised society of the early 60s. That is just really fascinating, especially for folks who love political history, who love just history in general, and are learning some of these eras that maybe they've not specialized in or have not really learned about the intricacies as we walk and talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Soviet Union's encroachment of the Western domination of the United States amongst the Western Hemisphere with Cuba.
The doors for the Cuban Missile Crisis film, To the Brink, will be opening in 30 seconds.
I think it's already had a material effect on that's proposed. Susan, he is right under 5:30. Yeah, we're going to think about it. Okay, think about it. Think about it. I think if there was anything that shocked me when I became Attorney General was the fact that there are large numbers of our population, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, who cannot vote because of the fact that they are disabled.
We say that a great deal more can be done. We say that we're going to do more. But when we've got to consider where we started at.
That doesn't say all these points, but it's something to work with. I just agree with that.
From the White House, the CBS network presents a special address by the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. The President will speak on the integration of the University of Alabama. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Earlier we saw President Kennedy's, well, when he was younger, Jack Kennedy's love for the sea, and then his enrollment in the Navy and his activity in World War II. But World War II really did shape him. There's actually an entire exhibit here about World War II. And you would think, how did that come about to have an entire exhibit here at the JFK Library? Well, his father, Joseph Kennedy Sr., was heavily involved in the Franklin Roosevelt administration as well throughout the course of the pre-World War II era. And so his policies, his thoughts, the role of World War II strongly influenced JFK in such a way that it prepared him for dealing with the Soviet Union during the height of the Cold War as well. So it is interesting to see the World War II exhibit, how it relates to Kennedy's role with civil rights, from the Japanese internment camps to the ability of black American citizens to be able to enroll in the military, so on and so forth, and Kennedy's role in civil rights in America during his short tenure as well. Finishing up at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library Museum, and really enjoyed the museum. It really gave a good sense of JFK's moral compass throughout his life, leading up through to the conventions, through his presidency, and so on and so forth. In contrast to the Franklin Roosevelt Presidential Library Museum in the Hyde Park, New York area, I found that the FDR Museum did a better job at presenting the cons of FDR, or his either the failures or the incompleteness of his plans and policies, more than the JFK Museum did. The JFK Museum here was a much more sunny, rainbow, everything is flowering, everything is happy type museum, celebrating the life of JFK and his policies. And while those do need to be celebrated, I think a little bit of balance could be in order for whatever that would be. Again, all of the good that he did had some significant costs as well. No president is perfect. They always have failures, whether they're personal failures, political failures, or policy failures. And I think the JFK Museum could have done a little bit better of a job of that, but still, all in all, a fantastic place to explore, particularly if you are not super well versed in the intricacies of 20th century politics or 20th century history. If your expertise or passion is more other eras, then this may not be something that you may have already had a lot of background knowledge, and it will be very interesting to and enlightening to experience it for yourself. So I'd highly encourage you to do that. And that may end our day here in Boston today, as we're going to get ourselves ready to hit the road again tomorrow. Boston has been an absolute pleasure, and we'll continue on. See you later.